Hey guys, welcome and ting and ting and ting. And we're gonna go to Ireland. Yes, another one of my favorite places and ting. And this one is a legendary history of Irish pubs. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. I mean, I'm not a pub dude much. Well, bars. I don't go to bars here much because everybody wants to get all fisty cuffing and thing in the bars here, so I don't go to bars. But when I do visit Ireland, I want to go to some quaint little pubs and things. So I might as well find out the history of it. All right, let's YouTube and simmer and see what they'll say about the Irish pubs.
I'm Alice Loxton, and I present documentaries over on History Hit TV. If you're passionate about all things history, sign up to History Hit TV. It's like Netflix, but just for history. We've got hours of ad-free documentaries about all aspects of the past. You can get a huge discount from History Hit TV. Make sure you check out the details below and use the code AbsoluteHistory, all one word, when you sign up. Now, on with the show.
Yeah.
From saints to songs to pouring the perfect pint, welcome to Dublin. Ah yes, Dublin is known for St. Patrick, Trinity College, and lots of authentic Irish pubs. But why? Here's what I'm curious about with Dublin's iconic pubs. Where do we get the name pub? Why does a historically male drinking establishment have such pretty flowers adorning it? How did traditional Irish music get intertwined with pub history? What is the Brian Boru harp? And what does it have to do with dark beer? How did a man named Arthur create a Dublin icon? What was a Brehon law and a spirit grocery and a snug? What is the science and the art to pouring the perfect pint?
Ooh.
And most importantly, why does a pub feel like a friend's home? Who, what, where, why, when, and how? Pull up a stool and grab a pint.
Let's
go. It's time to get curious about Dublin's pub history. We begin our curious journey at one of the oldest pubs in Dublin. The Brazen Head dates back to 1198.
Wow.
From medieval times through modern, when James Joyce and Jonathan Swift were known to throw back a pint or two here. Another famous Dublin bar is Temple Bar, which isn't really a pub. This is the famous Temple Bar that is neither a temple nor a bar. It refers to the entire area here that in 1599 was named after Sir William Temple. The bar park comes from a sandbar that was built right around here to protect from flooding from the nearby River Liffey. Now, to be fair, today there are a lot of bars within the Temple Bar area, but here in Dublin they call them pubs, so let's not get confused. And those pubs or bars are covered with pretty flowers. Why something so delicate where manly men throw back a pint? Well, this tradition dates back to ancient Roman times when the alewoman would place a bunch of vine leaves high up on a pole to let travelers from afar know that the ale was ready.
Okay, now that is so cool because I always wondered why every time I see like a pub in Ireland there's a lot of flowers on it. So it did have a practical reasoning for it. No, it's just for aesthetic more than anything else. But also, you're knocking back a pint. Having pretty flowers there might, calm down the rowdy ones, you know what I mean? Having a little bit of prettiness in the vibe and thing, it might calm down the rowdy ones. It might have some kind of psychological effect also.
Next, where do we get the terms pub or tavern? We get the name tavern from the Latin taberna, meaning hut or dwelling. Then the word branched off into two very different meanings. Tavern, where one commits one's sins, and tabernacle, where one begs forgiveness for said sins. So, as I said, the pub and the church are forever intertwined. But where do we get the name pub? Well, quite simply from public house. Ever notice how a pub looks like a home? Well, that is because pubs came out of private homes. The owners would open their first floors or parlor rooms as a bar. Sometimes they'd also rent out a room upstairs to weary travelers, which is why you might see the word inn in the names of pubs today. Next, Next, during the Middle
always
Ages,
wondered
lest
that
you
too.
think a pub is only a place for sinners, many pubs were used by travelers on a religious pilgrimage. But no matter the purpose of their visit, all pub guests would share stories about their adventures, which created our next pub tradition, storytelling. And for that history, we go to the Little Museum of Dublin, where there is an entire exhibit dedicated to the history of the Irish pub. Here, director Trevor White tells the tale of telling tall tales in Irish pubs. The idea is at a pub, you come up to the bar, and as you sit next to a stranger, it's impolite to not talk to the stranger. Whereas maybe in the States or somewhere else, it's impolite to be intrusive to just start up a conversation with a stranger.
Absolutely, it's more than a cliche. A stranger is a friend you have never met. That is a phrase that embodies the Irish tradition of hospitality.
And once you strike up a conversation with your new friend, sit back and get ready for some serious Irish banter.
Indeed, it's arguable that conversation, this thing that we're really good at here in Dublin, which is arguing with each other, basically, it isn't an art form in Dublin, it's more of a sport, and it's a sport that's played in pubs all over the city.
See, that's the thing, man. In bars here, you can't really go in there and sit down and have a conversation. The music is so bloody loud in there, they have to have this music blaring in the background, and I hated that. That's another reason why I don't go to bars here, because you gotta scream above all this music playing in the background. Now, back on the island, when you go to a bar or something, usually the bars are on the beach. There's bars on inland too, don't get me wrong, but I live in the beach area, so there's an outdoor area, so you just go out there and you sit and you tell stories and you talk. Here, people get into politics like really big in bars. That's another reason why I don't go in there, because then drunk people and politics as it is now is not a good combination. It is not. It always ends up in some kind of a fisty fights or something like that. So the storytelling part would be cool though, you know what I mean? If I could find there was a place just up the street here called Camaraderie Cafe. And it was a restaurant / bar. And we would sit there and tell stories and stuff and talk to each other about stuff. Sometimes there was a little philosophical conversation because there were writers and stuff hanging out there. But after that bar was gone, there was just nowhere else to go, you know what I mean? So I just stopped going out. But it would be cool, and hopefully they still do that in Ireland, to go into an old pub in Ireland and just have Irish people tell me stories, because it's always been said that the Irish are some of the best storytellers out there, you know what I mean? So could you imagine sitting there speaking to an older gentleman telling stories about when he was younger back in the day in Ireland or something like that, you know what I mean? That would be kind of neat, That's something. Now, on bucket list, that's one of the main reasons why I would go to a pub. Hear them tall tales.
And those pubs that host this uniquely Irish sport are quite beautiful. And one bit of authentic Irish pub architecture is so snuggly, it is simply called the snug. So we snuggle into the snug with museum curator and Irish pub expert Simon O'Connor.
The snug is a very interesting piece of the architecture of a typical Dublin bar.
And who sat in the snug? Who was supposed to sit in the snug?
So it could have been people who didn't want to be seen in the bar, it might have been policemen, it might have been priests, but also as well it became an area for women to drink in. It was very much just that women wouldn't really have been welcome in bars, so it was a very patriarchal type of scenario.
Yep, that's right. The snug was mostly known for the time of some serious gender inequality, when women weren't welcomed in pubs.
Wow.
Believe it or not, until the modern day, it was illegal in Ireland for a woman to be served a pint of beer in a pub, unless, of course, she was accompanied by a male chaperone. And until the 1970s, some pubs still didn't allow women in at all. But many pubs had a snug where the women could gather, and quite likely banter a bit about those men. But today, it's just a lovely bit of pub history and architecture. But way before the snug dictated where different people could drink, In the Middle Ages, there was something that dictated that certain people could drink for free. This was part of something called the Brehon laws. What was the Brehon law and how did that affect pub culture?
They're kind of amusing in a lot of ways because they just show, they speak to this very different society that existed. A king or a landowner was duty bound by these laws to have a place where travellers could go and drink for free.
Oh, interesting.
The laws governed things like how much monks were allowed to drink versus regular people, because the monks obviously were producing lots of the ale themselves, and they were just very unusual laws. But I think what's interesting about them is that they do speak to that hospitality, which is such a character of the country.
By the 1600s, there were nearly 1,200 pubs in Dublin. Now, this was at a time where there were only 4,000 families in Dublin. That's a lot of hospitality. So, pubs in Ireland were formally licensed in 1635. In 1735, the Drink on Credit to Servants Act said that pub owners could not collect on an unpaid bar tab from a servant or a poor person. Believe it or not, that law is still in effect in Ireland today.
What?
In the spirit of welcoming the everyman, made the pubs not just a place to grab a pint, but it also functioned as the working class's personal living room. Was there a point in history where it was only private clubs that perhaps men would go to and they'd have to pay a fee to be in the club to drink, and therefore the alternative for the everyday man was the public house because you didn't have to pay a fee to go in?
Exactly, yeah. So there's this concept that people talk about, which is the idea of the third space. So the first space is your home, the second space is where you work, and the third space is where you socialize. But for most people, the third space became the public house.
Fast forward to the 19th and 20th centuries, and we explore why you can buy a packet of crisps in a pub. When the temperance movement of the 1800s dissuaded people from the evils of the drink, pubs had to diversify their businesses. So the Spirit Grocery was born, which was basically a grocery store that happened to sell alcohol as one of its items, instead of a pub that only sold alcohol. Some publicans, as pub owners were called, even became the local undertaker, selling pints and coffins side by side.
That's interesting because on the island, we have bars, but we also had what you call rum shops, which is kind of similar to that because they sell groceries and you could go in there, you could buy a pound of sugar, a pound of flour, a pound of rice, butter, lard, you could buy like a cake and bread and not the fancy cakes here. We're talking about coconut buns and stuff like that, and it's just this little neighborhood shop, and it's usually could only hold like 5 or 6 people at a time, but some of them had benches outside, and they also sell rum, so you could go in there and get shots of rum, and there was always people sitting in there drinking rum and stuff like that. So it's like a bar slash village grocery store, and a lot of those places too, on the outside there's guys sitting out there playing, drunk guys sitting out there playing dominoes on a wooden table and thing, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like that, only with a tropical sense of it, a grocery store slash bar.
Creepy history aside, those Spirit Groceries explain why many of today's Irish pubs still have grocery shelves behind the bar. Next, from the place to buy your canned soup to the place to kick up your heels, licensing laws are also the reason why we hear beautiful traditional Irish music in pubs today.
So that's actually really interesting. The Catholic Church didn't want men and women getting together at music dances as much anymore. They wanted to kind of move men and women away from each other, and typically Irish music would have been heard in community halls, in dance halls.
Oh, well, that explains why we had. That explains why I went to the St. George's Roman Catholic Boys School, and my sister went to the St. George's Convent. Boys' school with all boys, convent was all girls, and then there was also the school I went to, that was primary school. Then the school my sister that I'm talking about was a secondary school, but there was also a primary school called Mother Rose, and it was all girls in there. There was no boys. Now, when I went to secondary school, I went to a Methodist secondary school, and it was co-ed, boys and girls. So that there was a remnant of the Catholics trying to separate men and women. Ooh, interesting.
But a law was passed in the mid-20th century that basically said you can't have music being performed in a place that doesn't have a license. So ironically then, the music moved to pubs.
Because they had a license.
Because they had a license.
And there is one more Irish pub tradition that is perhaps the most curious of all. And it has something to do with not Sunday worship, but Mondays. Who is or was Saint Monday?
Saint Monday. So Saint Monday is a fantastic little anecdote. Saint Monday was the patron saint of hangovers, and people would. It was just a phrase really that was used in Dublin where people would pray to Saint Monday because they had gone out on a Sunday night and had to go into work on a Monday morning.
The patron saint of hangovers.
Patron saint of hangovers. We should all be praying to regularly.
So, in order to pray to Saint Monday, you have to put in your time at your local pub on Saturdays and Sundays, right? Which brings us to the Cobblestone Pub in Dublin's Smithfield neighborhood. This is owner Thomas Mulligan, who is a school teacher by day and pub owner by night. But this isn't just his family business, it is also his home.
It's been in the family about 30, I'd say, thereabouts.
And you literally grew up above the pub?
Right above there, the room right down there at the front of the pub was where I was christened in, or they had the christening party. On the second floor above that was my first home.
From family
Wow, that's kinda
celebrations
cool.
to the local gathering spot, here in Dublin, life happens in the pub. This is not just a place you pop in to have a
No,
drink.
not at all. It's very much the community centre. The church or community centre would be like the sort of equivalents, but the church not so much in Ireland anymore, but the pub still is.
The pub is the neighborhood gathering place, the third place where everybody knows your name.
Best friends come in here, they play music in here, they drink in here, they've worked in here from time to time, just people have met the love of their life.
So with the pub being such an integral part of everyday life, there's bound to be regulars. Are there any regulars that come in that maybe have been coming for years and you just know them all, you know exactly what they want to drink before they go? Yeah.
So that you just get, that means a pint of Guinness or a pint of Carl's based off here there.
That's how you do.
All those.
That's fantastic. And those regulars wouldn't dream of going anywhere other than their local pub, which they simply call the local.
It's nearly gang turf, you know, some people would just, they wouldn't deviate outside that. There's like a few lads that drink in here that every so often there might be a function on, maybe somebody's birthday, so they want to go somewhere different from this pub. So a few people would go like, maybe across the river, and they'd say that they're going on holidays, you know. It's just so alien to me.
Before we leave the Cobblestone, notice one more iconic element to the authentic Irish pub. That authentic Irish music.
They will welcome anybody into the section to sing a song. Somebody could walk in with a didgeridoo and they'd ask them to play it.
So why have local musicians gathered to play in Irish pubs for centuries? For that history, we go to another iconic Dublin pub, taking the scenic route to cross the musical symbol of Ireland. When you think of the symbol of Ireland, you may think of a four-leaf clover, but in fact, it is the Celtic harp. And you'll see it all over Dublin. It's on the coins, it is on their coat of arms, and the biggest example is behind me, an entire bridge in the shape of a harp. But no, it does not play the notes as you walk across it. The Irish harp dates back to the 10th century, and it is so important to Irish history that it is actually a symbol of Ireland. The specific harp is the Brian Boru harp. Brian Boru was a king of Ireland around 1000 AD, and it is this harp that's named after him that we see on display at Trinity College's Long Room Library. And we see it imitated on the Samuel Beckett Bridge and also with the Irish government's coat of arms and on the Irish coin. Which brings us to another bit of curious history. In 1922, when Ireland became a free state, they wanted to use the Brian Boru harp as its symbol. But Guinness had already trademarked it as their own. So the solution? Just flip the harp to face the other direction. So to this day, the government's harp faces to the left and Guinness's harp faces to the right.
Wow.
You gotta love a country where the beer comes first. Now, on to other traditional Irish instruments and music. This is O'Donoghue's Pub in Marion Row. It dates back to 1789, and it is the perfect place to hear a traditional Irish music session.
See, this is why I like those places like Dublin and all those old places. You go to places that has been there for centuries, man. Like these pubs. Here, they tear everything down and put up something new. They change everything. Nothing stays the same. Everything's just like boom, boom, you gotta change it. You gotta do this, you gotta do that. So there's no real tradition. Like for instance, most of the bars and stuff that was here when I came here, they no longer exist. The buildings, some of them are gone. Or somebody come in and just remodel it and then put something else in there. You know what I mean? And like, okay, the bar I used to go to, granted it wasn't there for long, you know what I mean? I can't remember if I came here, it was there, but I know it was there definitely in the 90s when I started school, because the school is right across the street from it, and the university, that is. And it was there for a good 15, 20 years. Now somebody else came in and they started a new bar. Now that older bar's name was Calamity Cafe, and they named it the new one they named the Calamity, but it's a totally different concept, like totally different. Before it was like a Tex-Mex, you know, and you go in there and there was like what they call tree huggers and peace and love and little hippie type people. Even though there was some people mixed in there that would come in with their guns and stuff and set it on the counter so they could put it in the back and stuff like that. But now they transform it and it's all these TVs in there with sports on it, you know what I mean? You know, like my ex-wife, she'd come in and she'd want to go there because they have some of the dishes in there that they used to serve in the other Calamity Cafe. But the ambiance is different. The ambiance is like every other bar around here, you know, bar/restaurant. You could go in there and watch sports. You know what I mean? And it's a bunch of people in polo shirts and all of that. It's not down to earth, and you know, it's just not like that anymore, you know? So they switched it up. So a tradition wasn't formed because something new just came and pushed it out, you know what I mean? But look at these pubs, man. 18th century, 11 something years since the one has been there. I mean, come on. That's crazy. It's beautiful.
In an open session, anyone who knows how to play can join in, and anyone in the pub is welcome to sing along. All this leads to that legendary Irish camaraderie that permeates a pub. But what's the history of the music itself? It goes back a lot further than those public houses, with its origins going back nearly 2,000 years, when the Celts arrived in Ireland. And to chat about all this beautiful Irish music history is musician, dancer, and Irish music expert Declan Gilland. And it wouldn't be a proper pub chat if we didn't have to shout over the live music.
I don't mind shouting over live music.
But seriously, I feel like there's two main types of Irish music. One that makes you dance and one that makes you cry. And when you hear the two, you can't not dance and you can't not cry because they're both so effective. Is that almost close to, you know,
that's actually really, really close. We have three kinds. People would say we have three kinds of music in Irish. They have Irish names, which is the gantry, golfy, and suture. And it is one of them is the Irish music that makes you dance, is the gantry. And then we have the Irish music that makes you sad, which is the golfy, that's sort of elements. And then we have one more kind as well, it's called the suture. And that's the music to make you sleep, like I don't know what.
I love it. that we know the different types of traditional Irish music, now we explore the traditional Irish instruments. Wait, those are Irish, right?
Do we hear most of the time in Irish music today? A lot of the instruments that are playing aren't actually Irish. So we use the wooden flute, which is actually English. We use the fiddle, which is more Italian. We only have the three instruments that are actually Irish instruments, and that's the uilleann pipes, which is our version of the bagpipes. Uilleann pipes, it's called the uilleann pipes because your elbow is your uilleann from Irish. You play them with your elbows, so it's elbow pipes. And then we have the harp. Our version of the harp is an older version, it's called the clarsach. And then we have one more, which is called the Brehon. And the Brehon is a drum. It comes from the Irish word bearer, so it actually translates as deafener.
But as you are clapping along, make sure you don't spill the most crucial element to Irish pub history, the beer. And here in Dublin, that beer is most likely to be an iconic, dark, and almost chewy brew known as Guinness. And for the history of Guinness, we go, no, not to another pub, but to a medieval gate named after a saint. Well, of course we do.
I haven't had a Guinness in a long time.
St. James's Gate dates back to Dublin's medieval history when it was the western entrance to the city. It was named after St. James because his holy well lay near this spot. Later, St. James's Gate became the starting point for Christians from all over Ireland to begin their pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. From a holy quest to a brewery? Yep, the Gate of St. James was demolished in 1734, and 25 years later, an old brewery near the site was purchased by an Irish visionary who would become very important to Dublin's pub history. The name of the man who lived here is synonymous with Dublin. His legacy is known around the world, including 6 generations of philanthropy. That man's name was Arthur Guinness. St. Patrick's Cathedral got a much-needed renovation in the 1800s. St. Stephen's Green was open to the public, and numerous charities were established, including housing for the poor, all thanks to the Guinness family. And there was one more kinda important contribution. What was it again? Oh yeah, a magical dark elixir brewed right here at St. James's Brewery that all started with a curiously long lease. On New Year's Eve in 1759, Arthur Guinness signed the lease and built his brewery right here. The interesting thing is that lease happened to be for 9,000 years. I just say that's confidence. He knew people would be enjoying his brew for a very, very long time. Now, look closely at the signature on that lease. Look familiar? It's the signature seen around the world on every bottle of Guinness. Also on every bottle is that iconic harp, with the curve to the right, of course. But it's what's on the inside that counts. Let's get to the brew itself. What was it that Arthur had invented? Was the beer already like that? He improved on it? When you have a Guinness, it's so distinct.
So Arthur was brewing ale as a young man, as that was the only style of beer that existed in Ireland at the time. He actually went over to London and tried porter that had become very popular with the market porters on the docks. He actually wanted to brew his own porter. So he came back here to St. James's Gate, and that's when he started roasting barley for the first time. And that's what gives Guinness the dark colour. It's known around the world as the black stuff, but it's actually a very, very, very deep ruby red.
And there's even more curious science to Guinness's iconic brew. In 1959, to celebrate their 200th anniversary, nitrogen was added to Guinness beer. Who the heck puts nitrogen into a drink? Well, a mathematician named Michael Ash, apparently. He was the one who discovered that nitrogen would produce that creamy layer on the top of a Guinness.
Oh, wow.
Which leads us from science to sacrament. Pouring the perfect pint is a serious business here in Dublin. For the first pour, you pull the handle towards you and fill to the top of the harp. Then before the second pour comes patience for a step called the surge, where you wait for the waves and clouds to settle. Told you this was scientific. Then the second pour, and fill to a level Dubliners call just proud of the rim. And this is the scary part. It's right over the top. Ah, work of art. smart. And now that we have our perfect pint, time to pair it with the perfect bites, which are also a big part of Irish pub history. And one iconic bit of pub fare started in 1837 with the British Prime Minister and a slimy little fella taken straight from the Irish Sea.
It was Benjamin Disraeli, the British Prime Minister. He had some oysters and some Guinness, and he wrote a lovely letter to his sister, I believe, to tell her how well they paired well together. So that was the first.
Interesting, and that's how the restaurant got its name.
That's where the restaurant got its name, but that's where Guinness and food was born.
Next, one of the most iconic Irish pub dishes, traditional Irish stew.
Ooh, that's something I want to try.
In Ireland for hundreds of years, even before Guinness had a peasant dinner, if you like. So they worked off the farm, they ate off the farms. It's traditional in the sense of a peasant dinner. For me personally, as a child growing up, my mother every Saturday would have beef and Guinness stew for us for our dinner. And we loved it. But my father worked in Guinness itself. He worked here, so our house always had a bottle of Guinness.
Oh, that's
so
great.
there was always Guinness going into the stew for us, which was great as well.
And there's one last authentic Irish pub lesson to be learned. Whether you're in the Cobblestone, O'Donoghue's, or the Guinness Storehouse, it's how to toast as the Irish do.
Sláinte.
That's Gaelic for to your health. Because where else but in a Dublin pub is a beer considered healthy? So, from private houses welcoming thirsty travelers in Rome and Britain, who put pretty little flowers up high to announce we're open, to a law that said the poor should drink for free, to a time when pubs were only welcoming to men, which gave rise to a snuggly bit of architecture, to a saint named Monday, to a gathering place for family celebrations, and a community center where the regulars know how to order a pint without saying a word. To the long-running Irish tradition of beautiful Irish music, with instruments that come from all over the world. To one instrument in particular that became the symbol of Ireland, in a long library, on a bridge, and on a coin, that when you flip it, the harp, not the coin, you get the symbol for perhaps the most iconic ingredient of any Dublin pub. A dark elixir that is equal parts science and art, that pours and pairs perfectly with a peasant dish you can still find in pubs today. All this combines to create the Dublin institution that is the perfect setting for Ireland's greatest talent, chatting and hospitality, where a stranger is just a friend you haven't met yet. Dublin's pubs have so much to be curious about.
Wow, that was quite interesting. That was really interesting. First off, the ambiance of the flowers and stuff is just great. That's the place that makes me want to walk into it, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's like people say it's not a manly thing, oh, you know what I mean? But if you like nature, you see them plants and stuff there? Oh yeah. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for this video. You all go check it out and take, you know what I mean? And if you all like what I react to here, just drop a like on the video, subscribe, hit the notification button so you know when I'm getting videos. Make sure and hit the notification button because I react to other countries also, so you know you could see when it's your country that I'm reacting to. This was quite interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. You all take care of each other, alright? Cool runnings.